This is lesson number 7, called the Columbian Exchange. We began talking about Columbus in our last couple of lectures. This is perhaps the key moment. This Columbian Exchange is going to link the Atlantic world together, Africa, Europe, and North and South America. Many historians view this as the launching of humanity into the modern era. If you'll notice, most of your textbooks either stop or start with Columbus. So the Columbian Exchange, let me define it first, and then we'll give you some significances, and there are more than one, and we'll provide you with a few examples. There are endless depictions of the Columbian Exchange if you want to go on your computer, and we'll have depictions of it for you here in the film and in D2L. Definition first. The Columbian Exchange is the transference of domesticated plants and animals, religion, culture, technology, disease, from one hemisphere to the other, from Eurasia to the New World, and from the New World eastward back to Eurasia and Africa. Significances of the Columbian Exchange. There's so many. The first is that it begins what we would call Atlantic slavery. Slavery will be necessary to produce the commodities, those crops in the New World, from which Europeans seek to get rich, sugar being the first of these commodity crops. So Atlantic slavery is obviously a great significance here, and we'll talk more about slavery as we go forward. Another significance is the creation of an Atlantic economy, a circuit of commerce that moves through the Atlantic basin, connecting east and west. Some historians call this triangular trade, and again, you can Google this and see what it looks like. Essentially, you have labor from Africa producing commodities in the New World. Those commodities are then transferred to Europe, where they're turned into finished products, sold back to African chieftains for more slaves, or back to the colonists or to Europeans themselves. So there's a triangular trade or an Atlantic circuit here of commerce. Another significance, and that is the destruction of the people of the Western Hemisphere. When Columbus and then those Europeans that follow him arrive here, they bring with them pathogens from the Old World. These diseases are such that the Indians, the Native Americans, they have no immunity to them. Having lived in isolation from these pathogens, they've developed no immunity and they're wiped out. It's estimated that up to 75 to 90% of the people of the New World are destroyed within a couple of generations due to these diseases brought over by the Europeans. I've heard these diseases referred to as invisible bullets because neither the Europeans nor the Indians know what is killing the Indians off in great numbers. This is a massive die-off. In fact, this is probably the greatest human disaster in history. I suppose the Black Death of the 14th century would be on that list, but this is probably number one. Just a massive die-off of the population of the Western Hemisphere. Other significances, the exchange of food, the exchange of domesticated plants and animals is going to create a diet revolution in the Atlantic world, and indeed across the world. There are going to be foods that are going to be swapped here, crops, and different items that are going to revolutionize human diet. So even though you have this massive die-off in the Western Hemisphere due to disease, you have a net increase in population because of a much healthier and better balanced diet across the Atlantic world. Let me give you some examples here. Domesticated plants and animals, we'll start there. Beginning with Columbus and then afterwards, the Europeans will bring those commonplace animals that we all think of as belonging here. Of course, none of these were here before Columbus. Cows, horses, donkeys, mules, pigs, chickens, honeybees, oxen, what else? just a huge variety of domesticated animals available in Eurasia, but not available in the New World. These creatures are brought here by Columbus and then the people who follow him. You think about the cow itself, this is probably the key domesticated animal in human history. The cow eats nothing but grass, which we have no use for. And then what does the cow turn grass into? Beef and milk and cream and butter and leather and on and on and on. The cow takes grass and turns it into everyday useful items that you probably already partaken of today. And you will, even as the day goes on, consume cow again in some way. Think about the pig brought over by Columbus. The pig has a couple of disadvantages that the cow doesn't suffer from. Number one, the pig competes with us for food. The pig will eat virtually anything and is a willful and intelligent creature, unlike a cow who you can lead to virtually any fate that you want him to suffer. A pig is a willful animal. And pigs, of course, not only compete with us for food, but they also destroy the environment. If you've ever rubbed a pig's nose, you'll see that it's highly calloused. It's like a little shovel, and pigs root constantly and dig up the soil. The soil is then washed away in the first rainstorm. So you have a fundamental change in the environment when pigs are introduced into the Western world. So you have domesticated animals coming to the New World. In the New World itself, there are very few animals available for domestication. We can count them on one hand. Llamas and alpacas in the Peruvian Andes, small pack animals, turkeys, and what else? Dogs and guinea pigs. Guinea pigs, of course, are a source of food. It's a standard dietary item in South America. Now, dogs are on both hemispheres, the Old World and the New World, yet the dogs in the New World never have to do something that dogs in the Old World do almost every day, and that's herd. The reason for this is very simple. There's nothing to herd in the New World. It would be kind of silly to herd a bunch of guinea pigs or llamas or alpacas. In the Old World, you have livestock to herd. In the New World, you do not. Domesticated plants. Let me talk about domesticated grasses here for a moment, because that's the most important. In the Old World, you have such standard dietary items as wheat, barley, oats, rye, sorghum, and millet. Just a wide variety of domesticated grasses. These form the foundation of human diet, from pasta to bread. In the New World, you have one domesticated grass, and that's corn. Now, corn is a heavy hitter, but it is only the one domesticated grass available to the indigenous people of the West. Other food products, probably the most important coming from the New World going back to the Old, besides corn, is potatoes. Potatoes are easily stored. They grow underground. An army could march over a field of potatoes and not harm them. Potatoes are highly caloric, great source of carbohydrates. You can keep people alive on potatoes and beer for a long time. Other foods going from the New World back to the Old, chocolate, vanilla. Tobacco, of course, is not a food, but it will become a very popular item in the 17th century. And we'll talk about that more later. You have peppers and tomatoes and squashes and beans going back to the Old World. So there is an exchange here of food items, domesticated plants, and animals. I want to say one word here about technology. Europeans are going to bring items made of metal to the New World. The Indians do not have metallurgy, and they will quickly become dependent upon these European manufactured goods, from firearms to gardening tools to hatchets and knives, cookware, and on and on. Other technology, something as basic as the wheel, is brought over by the Europeans. And for the obvious reason, the Indians did not need a wheel before the Europeans arrived, because the Indians had no animals, no large domesticated animals, to pull a cart. So who needs a wheel if you have no way to pull a cart. I mean, yeah, that's right. So technology, let's talk about culture or religion a bit. The Europeans are going to bring a new, powerful Christian God to the New World. This new and powerful God apparently is displeased with Indians because the Indians are dying off in massive numbers. Again, this is the 15th century. There are no germs, there's no bacteria, there are no viruses. What is killing the Indians in these large numbers? It would appear to be this new, angry Christian God that the Europeans have brought with them. What other explanation could you have for this massive die-off? The Europeans are not dying, it's the Indians that are dying. Perhaps their God is angry with the Indians and is showing his disfavor. Perhaps this new Christian God is wiping out the Indians to make room for the Europeans. At any rate, you can imagine the impact this has on Indian society. The shamans, what are our synonyms for shamans? Witch doctors, medicine men. These shamans are a combination of priest and pharmacist. You would consult them before you do something important. The tribe might consult the shaman before undertaking some large venture. Well, the shaman's power is overturned by the Europeans and this new powerful God. Let's face it, there is nothing in the shaman's pouch of herbs that can cure smallpox. And smallpox is the great killer. Of all the European pathogens and diseases brought over, it is smallpox. It's going to cause probably the greatest damage. So think about these technological, cultural items, food items, disease. In addition to smallpox, Europeans are going to bring a variety of deadly diseases with them. Now, some of these are standard childhood diseases that most of us have endured, measles and mumps and chickenpox. These diseases we've acquired some immunity to. The Indians have no immunity to them, and they're wiped out by them. Other diseases brought to the New World, of course, we bring the plague, whooping cough, diphtheria, typhoid, cholera, dysentery. This is a deadly array of pathogens being brought over to people who have never experienced them. Now, the Indians give back to the Europeans diseases of their own. Hepatitis, encephalitis, polio, tuberculosis. These are all New World diseases that the Europeans will take back to Eurasia. In addition to the disease that keeps on giving, and that's syphilis. So let's draw some conclusions here about the Columbian Exchange. This is the key breaking point in history. This links the world together. This fundamentally changes human diet. This launches the age of imperialism, where the European nations are now going to venture out and begin to colonize the rest of the world. And we'll talk about imperialism in a later lecture. This not only links the continents together, but creates a vast circuit of trade. It produces wealth and inventions. It opens up the eyes of the Europeans to a new world. How do we account for these Indians? Are they a part of God's plan? And the new animals that are discovered. So there's a great transference here. This has a tendency to shrink the world and to launch us into the modern era. And this all goes back to Columbus and that initial contact between the Europeans and the indigenous people of the New World. So we will talk about the Indians in our next lecture. Thank you.